Now for the Walking Dead part of the show. Now, what's interesting about it is, and Jonathan and I talked about this last night, I do think that there has been some lack of, that the sort of fervor with which people advocate the ideology of censorship has died down somewhat. You don't have great intellectual defenses of censorship with the exception of Jeremy Waldron's, and Jeremy Waldron's is a narrow conception, just like Jonathan said. But what's happening when you undermine the moral force of free speech, then other forces are allowed to replace it. And that includes mindless bureaucratic application of rules. And I've seen a lot of this. I even added a chapter in my book at the last minute about this. So this is the free speech zone at University of Cincinnati. A libertarian student group was trying to hand out a right to work petition, trying to petition the government for redress of grievances. And they were told that they not only had to get into an area that was literally 0.1% of the campus, that free speech zone is represented by the pin, but that they had to get 10 days advance state permission in order to do so. That's not an awful lot of free speech. I don't think they should have needed to go to court for this. They went to court, they fought this out in court, and of course this was laughed out of court. This is not a reasonable time, place, and manner restriction. Nobody would think so. But what's scarier to me than the fact that they had this code in the first place was that they thought it was a good and noble thing to fight this out in court. Now, even worse, and this is something that you're just you should really look up online. We just filed a suit with Bob Korn-Revere, who's in the audience, last week in a case in which a student, he basically looked at his campus and said, my campus is so restrictive, I bet I could get in trouble for handing out copies of the Constitution on Constitution Day. So he proceeds to go out and just hand out free copies of the Constitution, and it is, as the blogger Popap put it, the university obligingly beclowned itself. And comes out, and first he's approached by an officer who explains, it's like, listen, you can't, and he's sort of like, you do understand I'm handing out copies of the Constitution on Constitution Day. He's then sent to an administrator who just amazingly, pitch perfect, explains, you're supposed to go to the free speech zone in that little concrete area over there, making this hand action, which I just thought was terrific. But then she goes to a binder, and that's what she's doing right there. She's looking at a binder about when he can apply to use the free speech zone in order to hand out constitutions. She says, okay, a couple days from now might be possible, or maybe in October. This is September 17th, by the way. So again, this has taken on sort of a life of its own, this kind of zombie-like quality of it. Now, when I was first talking about the book on learning liberty, campus censorship and the end of American debate, probably the most distressing thing was things have gotten so bad with regards to people's attitudes about free speech. When I could come up with hundreds and hundreds of examples of censorship on college campuses, I was still getting the response, why does this matter? I think by itself, this should matter. But I do think it's bleeding out in the larger society, and I was looking for data that shows how widespread this concern is. And I found this. 2010 survey asked 25,000 students this milquetoast question, do you believe it is safe to hold unpopular positions on your campus? This is the kind of question that you ask when you want 100% of people saying, sure, it's safe to hold it. It's not safe to discuss it, but sure, just holding it? Of course I can hold them. And nonetheless, despite this being a question designed to get 100% of people saying sure, only 40% of college freshmen strongly agree with the statement that it is safe to merely hold unpopular points of view on campus. And then look what happens. Every year they're there, that attitude goes down till it's only 30% of college seniors saying that it's safe to hold unpopular points of view on campus. And guess what group was the most cynical about the freedom of speech on college campuses? Faculty. Only 16.7% of faculty members strongly agreed with the statement that it's safe to merely hold unpopular points of view on campus. So why don't you hear about that this much? Well, there's a couple reasons. One is if you follow 3 simple rules, you'll be fine. Talk to the people you already agree with, join the ideological groups that reflect what you believed in high school, and don't disagree with professors whose egos can't take it. You follow those 3 rules and you're going to be fine. But the problem is that is supercharging everything that's wrong with our society. We are already talking to the people we already agree with. We're already watching the news channels that reflect what we believe. And if universities are applying really overt pressure to keep people from having discussions that might offend, we can only expect more of this. But here's what's worse about it, is that I don't know if students believe this is even a bad thing. This was especially chilling fact that came out. Citizens have been asked by the First Amendment Center for years now, ask this question: does the First Amendment go too far? And this year, it was one of the worst results they'd had in their history, and particularly stark among 18 to 30-year-olds. 47% of 18 to 30-year-olds came back saying, no, the free speech goes too far. First Amendment goes too far, implicitly saying, or quite explicitly saying, we have much free speech rights. 47%, and I see this when I go to college campuses. I've seen this every year over the past 5 years, that say 5-10 years ago when I used to go, you'd hear gasps when I talk about these cases of censorship, and now you end up getting more nods and people going, well, the administrator's heart must have been in the right place. Just absolutely chilling to me. So I want to just conclude by saying, quoting FIRE co-founder Alan Charles Kors, because he encapsulated what's at stake here when you undermine the practice of free speech on what should be the freest institutions in our country. A nation that does not educate in liberty will not long endure in liberty, and will not even know when it is lost.